we are, a little over a year, 14 months post-discovery, and I've yet to have a conversation or an email exchange of any kind with my half-sister.
Hello, you are listening to NPE Stories. This is a podcast where NPEs can share their story. I am your host, Lily, and I found out I was an NPE through an ancestry DNA test that changed my life forever. NPE is a term that stands for Not Parent Expected or Non-Paternal Event. This means that one or more of our parents are not who we believe them to be. NPE Stories is a podcast where NPEs can share their story of what their original family was like, how they found out they were an NPE, and what their journey has been like since the day they found out. And welcome to episode 36, where today I am talking to Joy. Hi, Joy.
Hi, Lily.
Thank you for being willing to share your story today.
Thank you, Lily. I appreciate the invitation, and I appreciate the space that you've created for all of us NPEs to come here and tell our stories.
You're welcome. Today will be the first time I'm hearing your NPE story. So I'm going in blind, and why don't you just go ahead and start from the beginning and let me know what your original family was like and how you found out you were an NPE.
Okay. Well, I was born in 1961, and my mother was married to my birth certificate father, and they actually divorced when I was less than a year old. So I actually never had a relationship with him, did not see him, did not get, there was no communication whatsoever between us. That left very much a void of not having that authoritative or male figure in my life. From that point on, my mother remarried several times by the time that I was 10 years old, which created a little of instability in the household. My home life was not stable. It was not safe. There was a lot of volatility from both between her and her children and her and whatever husband she happened to be married to at the time. And so it was very different. In those days too, it wasn't that common, or it wasn't known to be that common for somebody to be divorced. I can remember there were children in our neighborhood that I was not allowed to play with because their parents didn't want their child to play with somebody of a divorced woman. So it was a very different time, and I do recognize that, as I've gone back and looked through all of this, times and the way we thought about things are certainly much different now than they were then. Over the course of the next few years, I did have a half brother and half sister. Both were from different fathers. My mother was a very difficult person. She needed to be the center of attention, whether that was good attention, whether that was she needed to play, the victim, whatever that looked like. Everything with her from an emotional standpoint was very conditional. Were you good enough? Did you do this good enough? Were you perfect? Did you clean enough? There were some very high, unrealistic expectations. And everything was, as I said, it was very conditional as to whether or not you were going to get any positive feedback from her. And that wasn't very much. I mean, there wasn't a lot of positive feedback from her. There was a lot of um, she was mean, and she could be hateful. Um, Looking back on it as an adult, I recognize that there were probably some um, mental issues that went along with that. Um, but that was sort of that was kind of the setting for the way that I grew up. I actually have not had a relationship with my mother in over 35 years. Um, and um, it was something that was necessary, um, that I needed to do. 35 years ago, I actually was awarded custody of my younger sister, and that doesn't go over well at family reunions. So, but it was what was necessary, and it was a good thing. And so, and you can't really miss what you never had. So that's just a little bit of kind of the background of of my story. I will also add that the house that I lived in was there was lots of secrets and lies. I probably didn't realize the number of lies, although I did realize it at the time. Things were not adding up. There were lots of secrets, things that you weren't supposed to tell outside of the home because it was supposed to look perfect. And of course, we all know that there is no such thing as that perfect family or that perfect home life. So, kind of to fast forward, that was sort of the growing up space that I grew up in. Um, in November of 2018, I saw that Ancestry had their kits on sale. And my husband had, for quite some time, said, "Man, I would love to just know where I came from and what sort of background, we're made up from an ethnicity standpoint. And I just think that would be so neat." And he's very much that person that, is intrigued by history and all of the things. And so I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to get that for him for Christmas. And lo and behold, as I said, it was on sale. So I got a 2-for-1. Guess what? I'm going to do it too. Because, of course, realize I had absolutely no idea who my dad was. I did not know anything about his family. I didn't know what kind of ethnicity, he brought to the table. Additionally, my mother was adopted. And so that was also a big question mark in my mind. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this too. And it's going to be so fun. And I'm going to learn so many things. And oh my goodness, wouldn't it be amazing if I actually found my dad? And didn't, I was a little scared about that. Certainly, um, you know, clearly I already felt like I had been rejected by him throughout my entire life. And oh my gosh, what if I found him and he rejected me again? And what would that look like? And what would that feel like? And was I prepared to handle that? And all of the emotions that kind of, get wrapped up in that situation. So anyway, long story short, ordered them, got them, and he opened it on Christmas Day and was thrilled to death. He actually did his test and set it up before I did. I was a little bit more, I was kind of dragging my feet a little bit. And I don't know. It's like, do I want the answers? Do I not want the answers kind of situation? So I eventually went ahead and spit in the little tube and sent it away and waited. So that was in January of 2019 that I sent it away. And it was fast forward to kind of 2 months later. Well, in the meantime, I will say, by this time, I had set up my account and I thought, you know what, I'm going to start building my family tree on Ancestry. So I started doing that, and I discovered that my birth certificate father had already passed away. But I also thought, you know what, maybe there's a half sibling out there. Maybe they don't know me. I don't know them. Maybe wouldn't that be an amazing relationship? What would that look like? Um, and so I did have that expectation there was going to be a few surprises out there or new people that I was going to have a chance to kind of meet and build a relationship with. Um, and so I started putting in, grandparents and great grandparents, and I had built out um, quite a tree. There was lots of information on there on my paternal side. So I kind of been doing this for about 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks. I don't know. Anyway, middle of March comes and I got email, your results were ready. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was so excited. Um, and so I opened it up. And of course, the first thing that we see is our ethnicity estimate. And I kind of had an idea of what I expected. Of course, I had always been told, as so many of us have, that you were going to have Native American in you. And of course, there was zero Native American in my ethnicity. And I thought, okay, well, you know what? It's just kind of it's one more story that I got told. Anyway, and so I was looking at the ethnicity. Um, there was a couple of little surprises. There was, of course, English, Irish, Scottish, and then there was some Norway and Sweden. And I thought, oh my goodness, I can't imagine where the Norway and Sweden came from. But it was all very interesting. So then from that place, I went to look at your matches. Well, lo and behold, I had a very close match. It was a half sibling. And I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. Just, first time out of the gate, and I've already got this great match. And I looked and I thought, well, it's a half sister. I don't know who this is. And I thought, well, she doesn't have my birth certificate dad's name, and I don't know who she is, so let me click on it. And I clicked on it, and of course, it did say, half sister. And of course, it also said, I think that same percentage goes into aunt and uncle. Well, I knew she couldn't be an aunt and uncle because she was younger than I was. And then I thought, oh my gosh, perhaps, my mother, gave up a baby for adoption because, of course, lots of those things come out as well. And that was not true either because she was actually born at a time that she was pregnant with my half brother. So I knew that that wasn't a possibility. And so I kind of went to her profile just to kind of look and see what she had. And lo and behold, there was a father. And I start, digging a little bit more, and everything keeps coming back to this father. And I will tell you, it sounds like it took a long time, but literally, I think in a span of 5 minutes, I found out that the man that I, had been led to believe my entire life was my birth certificate father actually was not. It was another man. And, so there's a lie. And then there's, of course, clearly she had an affair during her marriage to him. And that was, kind of a blow a little bit. I'm not surprised, but it was still a little bit shocking to just kind of have that, put in front of me. So I started looking at the other matches, and all of these other matches, whether they were first cousins or second cousins or whoever they were, kept on coming back to this one gentleman. And so within a day, I knew who my biological father was. And I know based on, um, lots of other stories that I've heard, people talk about both here and in some of the Facebook groups, that's actually quite amazing. And so I had a name, and of course, I started trying to gather all the information that I could on him, only to discover that he had just passed away 5 years earlier. That was another huge, huge blow to me, because here it was. It's like, okay, I lost one dad, but I've gotten another dad, um, and then that got taken away from me, just literally all within just a very few hours. Um, I feel like that day was it was very much kind of an out of body experience. Just
Mhm.
your emotions are all over the place. Your your brain is, I feel like there was a ping pong ball just bouncing around inside of there. And it was difficult. I happened to be out of town at the time, so I was by myself when I found out all this information. So I didn't even have, kind of my people, to kind of just, come around me and just be there. And not necessarily I'm looking for words, because there are no words, but just for some comfort, I think. And I I will tell you, as much as I was surprised about all of it, it made so much sense. There was just so much, here's this puzzle piece, and here's this puzzle piece, and here's this puzzle piece. And I don't have the whole puzzle put together yet, but um, and there's lots of the pieces and lots of answers that I'm never going to get. Um, but I kind of sat on that probably for a few days. I didn't really know what to do. I immediately, of course, I had built this beautiful tree that I was so proud of my birth certificate father's family. And I looked at it and I thought, I'd really grown attached to these people. And I, I'm sure that sounds very weird, but I'd never had my people before. So this was my first bonding experience really with family. So I immediately turned my tree to private, because I knew as soon as um, everybody started getting notifications, they were going to immediately they're going to go, who is this person? And they're going to immediately start going to that person's tree and trying to figure out, who is this person and how are they so closely related to us? So I did uh, I did change my tree to private, and I I just sat there. I just sat kind of in it for a few days, not really sure what that next step looked like. Um, I did, after a few days, decide that I needed to contact the girl that was showing up as my half sister. And I felt like it needed to be private, because as much as I was going to be shocked, I knew that she was going to be shocked too. And we just needed to create a safe space between the two of us, and try to put some things into perspective, and let that be a private moment between the two of us. So I did. I sent her a message through Ancestry, and I waited. And I think that night I must have woken up, I don't know how many times, and immediately, went to check the messaging system on Ancestry. And of course, there was nothing there, but it did tell me that it had been read. And of course, I also knew that every time somebody sends you an email, or at least at that time, I don't know if it still does that or not, but every time somebody sends you an email through the Ancestry system, it sends you an email. And so I knew that she had at least been notified that way, that she had gotten an email or a message through Ancestry. Um, and I still didn't get anything. And so the next day, I received a message from a first cousin on my paternal side. And she said, hey, I noticed we, have matched as first cousins. And how are we related? Well, I thought, again, I'm in that place where I need this to be private, and I need this to stay private um, until I have a chance to talk to this half sister. And I kind of put that, I kind of put her off, the first cousin off for a few days. And I wasn't getting anything. And I really didn't, at that time, didn't understand how common that was. Of course, now I realize, it could have been never. And that would have been typical as well. So anyway, I guess after about a week of not hearing anything from the half sister, I actually had luckily had had a session with my therapist, and luckily I was already in therapy through all this. And we, of course, talked about the situation a little bit. And through that conversation with her, it was decided that, you know what, I'd given her a week to kind of respond to me, and that it was appropriate. I did not have to make my tree public, but, it would be appropriate for me to go ahead and reach out to this first cousin. And so I did. We communicated back and forth quite a bit. And at first, I gave her very little information. And of course, by putting two and two together, she, of course, figured out what was going on. I also, at the same time, got another message from another first cousin that was, he is also an NPE in the same family, which actually, it's like, okay, well, I'm not by myself. This isn't this wasn't the only brother this happened to. And of course, he started to kind of tell me his story a little bit. And at that time, his birth father wanted no contact with him, and nor did any of his half siblings. That situation has changed somewhat over the course of the last year, which I'm so happy for him about. But he had a really good, stepdad that adopted him and loved him, gave him a good life. His mother also told him the truth. So I don't know that he's exactly the same as an NPE like the rest of us are, but his father was not the father he grew up with, and he had never met him. So we all were communicating. I got sent some pictures, and any questions that I asked were answered. And of course, along the way, I kept on saying, I understand, the shock. I understand the hesitation. I understand that you're now not, she was an only child. I understand that some of that has kind of been taken away, but at the same time, none of that's been taken away. Like, you still have that relationship with your dad, or our dad, and you still had that growing up with him, and you still had him walking down the aisle with you, and you still had him holding your sweet babies. And so, there were some things that I was never going to be able to take away from her. And so I had a little bit of a pity party for a period of time. And I'm not saying that I still don't have some pity party days, but at this point, we are, a little over a year, 14 months post discovery, and I've yet to have a conversation or an email exchange of any kind with my half sister. There are days that I want to really push it, and then there are days that you just sit there and go, you know what? If these people don't want me, I don't want them either. My cousin that first contacted me, can be very, very good about exchanging information. She can be really good about providing pictures. She's great. Anytime I email her, she always emails me back. But I have to do the work first. And I think I've just gotten to a place where I deserve for somebody to want to have a relationship with me too. And so that has been another part of this, that I've learned to get a little bit stronger about. Um, and back in March of this year, I was actually making a trip, um, within 45 minutes of my cousin and my aunt and my other cousins. Lots of my cousins and aunts and uncles live up there. And so, but we were going to do it in small increments. I was going to meet with her and her sister and then her mother, who was actually very close to my dad. And 2 days, or I take that back, 5 days before we were going to meet that weekend, another aunt was killed in a car crash. She was killed on a Tuesday. There was a funeral that week. And of course, although we had already made plans to meet on Sunday or Saturday or Sunday, I knew that it was possible because of all of this that it might not be the appropriate time, to meet. And so I kind of held on a little bit that it would still be okay. I was very much longing for that, at least to kind of get that process started. Um, and long story short, weekend came and I never heard from my cousin, never received an email or a text, and there's been no communication since then. So I don't know, um, at this point kind of where that leaves me. I will say that I've not reached back out. Of course, literally that weekend, that following Monday, the world got shut down. So,
Yeah.
things have been very different for all of us, because of that. But, I've also struggled with, has she just been stringing me along, trying to get information, or everything was fine until she had to tell somebody else in the family about me? I don't know. It's like I've struggled a little bit with that. I also have trust issues because I have trust issues, and so I never understand or know what somebody's ulterior motive is.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. So I don't know what the future looks like. Um, my goal is at some point in the future, if for no other reason, for me to write a letter to my half sister, and it'll say what it needs to say, and I'll leave it when I mail it. I'll leave it there. Either she can reply or she won't reply. I'm not at this point even in expecting any kind of reply. Um, but just to kind of get across, I'm not looking for anything. I don't need anything from her. I don't take anything away from her in our dad's relationship. And there's a place for all of us, um, to make our circle a little bit bigger. Um, she's an only child. As she gets older, you know, um, you know, we all know that family sometimes becomes more important, to us. So I don't know. I feel that need to communicate with her for one last time. Um, you know, if for no other reason to know that I did the one last thing, and what she does with it is what she does with it. Um, so that's kind of, that side of the story. On the side of the story that where my mother was adopted, I've done a lot of, um, building of that family tree, and still don't have some definitive answers completely, but so that's a process. So it's interesting. I jokingly tell my therapist, I have 128,000 people that I'm related to, and I don't know a single person. It's a very weird, awkward feeling. I did upload, my um, DNA to, of course, my heritage, FTDNA, GEDmatch, um, just to see if there was anything out there that I hadn't come across yet. And there's been very, very little. I haven't found it, you know, the golden egg's not out there yet. So that's not to say that I don't think that there isn't a golden egg out there. Um, I did also upload it to, and I don't know that I know how to pronounce this right, but Prometheus.
Oh, Prometheus. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyway, I did upload it to that just to kind of get an idea because when I go to fill out family medical history, I don't have any family medical history. And again, it's a very lonely, awkward place to just sit in. And so this is what a lot of this has been about too is you don't want a relationship with me, you don't want any part of it. Could you just give me some information? So at this point, I'm not holding my breath that I'm going to, get any kind of relationships out of any of these people. But it's if for no other reason, it's not for a lack of trying on my part. And so that's kind of my story.
And did you say you had also checked with 23andMe?
So I have not tested with 23andMe. Um, I I guess I felt like because I was on GEDmatch
Oh,
and I, of course, a lot of 23andMe upload there as well. It is out there. I have considered it,
yeah.
but I just feel like I already have so many of the same pieces of the puzzle that I don't know how much more 23andMe is going to give me.
Yep, that's true. I maybe I did 23andMe first, and I actually
Okay.
didn't piece together I was an NPE from that. I actually got more from Ancestry. So it sounds like you've done a lot considering you have very little information or very little of your paternal side of the family helping you, that is.
Oh, yes. But I will tell you, my paternal side of the family is probably 75% of the 128,000 matches that I have.
Isn't that funny? Wow.
And it's amazing, even of what the matches that I have, there's so many first and second cousins that I know of that haven't taken the test. So when
Hmm.
you look at it, it's like, can you imagine how big this thing could actually be if everybody in your family, took the
Hmm.
test?
Mm. Are you doing just the free to fill out your private tree or to fill out your family tree?
Mhm.
Are you doing just the free membership now, or did you upgrade to the premium or whatever
Oh
it's
no,
called?
I have a monthly subscription.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
because
I
I
have a
otherwise
monthly.
you can't. You have to do that to unlock a lot of the extra features, I believe.
Yes, yes, you have to have a subscription to unlock a lot of the extra. I did also this past week finally get a subscription to newspapers.com. Um, and
Now, what's that?
so newspapers.com is where you can actually see a particular person's obituary if they were printed.
Oh,
And so obituaries are a have a plethora of information. When people don't want to tell you the truth, I have
mhm,
found out more things by somebody's obituary than you would ever find on Ancestry. Ancestry's search only does as much as somebody's given them.
mhm.
And so I did do that. I actually, through all of this, have also discovered actually she's a fourth cousin, and she was adopted, and she was just trying to find her birth parents, and not from a perspective of having a relationship because she said her adoptive parents were wonderful, but just so to have a name, like just to kind of put that puzzle piece together a little bit for her. So I've actually been very active in helping her create her family tree. And again, obituaries are just a wealth of information.
Mm, mm. Great to know. Thanks for sharing that resource. And if people have more questions for you or would like to get in touch with you, is that okay? And how could
Oh,
they do that?
absolutely. They can contact me by email, and it's joy, dot rap, R-A-P as in Paul, P as in Paul, 5 at gmail.com.
Thanks again to Joy for sharing today. These stories are here for us to identify with. If you are an NPE that would like to share your story, email npestories@gmail.com. You do not have to give any identifying information. If you are an NPE and would like to share your story, I'd like to hear from you. Subscribe to this podcast to hear more. Come, heal with us.